Okay, so we're studying Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 5, entitled Vidura's Talks with Maitreya. We're on text 34, and it's August 5th, 2023. So text 34, Canto 3, Chapter 5, Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 5, Text 34. Anila Api Vikurvana Nabhasa Ubala Anvita Sasarja Rupa Tatmatram Gyoti Lokasya Lochanam Anilopi Vikurvano Nabhaso Balanvita Sasarja Rupa Tanmatram Gyoti Lokasya Lochanam Anilopi Vikurvano Nabhaso Balanvita Sasarja Rupa Tanmatram Gyotir Lokasya Lochanam Anilopi Vikurvano Nabhaso Balanvita Sasarja Rupa Tanmatram Gyotir Lokasya Lochanam Anilopi Vikurvano Nabhaso Balanvita Sasarja Rupa Tanmatram Gyotir Lokasya Lochanam. Would anyone online like to lead the chanting? Okay, we'll go to the word meanings. Anila, air. Api, also. Vikurvana, being transformed. Nabhasa, sky. Ubala Anvita, extremely powerful. Sasarja, created. Rupa, form. Tatmatram, sense perception. Gyoti, electricity. Lokasya, of the world. Lochanam, light to see. Translation. Thereafter, the extremely powerful air interacting with the sky generated the form of sense perception, and the perception of form transformed into electricity, the light to see the world. So there's no purport from Srila Prabhupada, so I'll read a few more verses till we get to a purport, and then we'll have some discussion. Text 35. Anilenan vitam jyotir vikurvad paravikshitam adatambo rasamayam kalamayam shayogatam. Translation: when electricity was surcharged in the air and was glanced over by the Supreme, at that time, by a mixture of eternal time and external energy, there occurred the creation of water and taste. Text 36. Jyotishambho nusam srishtam vikurvad brahma vikshitam mahim gandha gunam madhat kalamayam shayogata. Translation: thereafter the water produced from electricity was glanced over by the Supreme Personality of Godhead and mixed with eternal time and external energy. Thus it was transformed into the earth, which is qualified primarily by smell. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. From the descriptions of the physical elements in the above verses, it is clear that in all stages the glance of the Supreme is needed with the other additions and alterations. In every transformation, the last finishing touch is the glance of the Lord, who acts as a painter does when he mixes different colors to transform them into a particular color. When one element mixes with another, the number of its qualities increases. For example, the sky is the cause of air. The sky has only one quality, namely sound, but by the interaction of the sky with the glance of the Lord, mixed with eternal time and external nature, the air is produced, which has two qualities, sound and touch. Similarly, after the air is created, interaction of sky and air touched by time, and the external energy of the Lord produces electricity. And after the interaction of electricity with air and sky, mixed with time, external energy, and the Lord's glance over them, the water is produced. In the final stage of sky, there is one quality, namely sound. In the air, two qualities, sound and touch. In the electricity, three qualities, namely sound, touch, and form. In the water, four qualities, sound, touch, form, and taste. And in the last stage of physical development, the result is earth, which has all five qualities, sound, touch, form, taste, and smell. Although there are different mixtures of different materials, such mixtures do not take place automatically, just as a mixture of colors does not take place automatically without the touch of the living painter. The automatic system is factually activated by the glancing touch of the Lord. Living consciousness is the final word in all physical changes. This fact is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, text 10 as follows. Mayadakshena prakriti sriyate sataracharam hetunanena konteya jagadviparivartate. The conclusion is that the physical elements may work very wonderfully to the layman's eyes, but their workings actually take place under the supervision of the Lord. Those who can mark only the changes of the physical elements and cannot perceive the hidden hands of the Lord behind them are certainly less intelligent persons, although they may be advertised as great material scientists. Hare Krishna. Om Ganantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namah. Sri Chaitanya Manu Bishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Upakadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Upam Sagrajatam Saganaragnatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Prijana Saitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatu Yubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gauravani Pracharine. Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasvatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should first offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, to Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Praesha Bhadreshu Nicham Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavat Utamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. Hare Krishna. Hi. So we're studying Srimad Bhagavatam. Just now we recited some verses about the Bhagavatam. Narayanam Namaskritya. So this Bhagavatam, this is it's the follow-up book, we could say the sequel to Bhagavad Gita. In a sense, Bhagavatam begins where Bhagavad Gita concludes. Bhagavad Gita concludes with Sri Krishna saying, Sarvadaman Parityagya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo Mokshaya Shamimashutcha. Basically, just surrender to me with all your heart and soul, pure devotion to God, to Sri Krishna. And that's where Bhagavatam begins. So Bhagavatam, you could say it's part of the Vedic literature, but it's not, it's another Veda. No, it's described right there in the third verse. Bhagavatam has 18,000 verses. So we're starting here with the importance of this literature, this I'll call it transpersonal literature that we're studying. So Srila Vyasadeva says, Nigama kalpataror galitampalam sukha mukharamrita drava samyutam pibata bhagavatam rasamalayam horasiki bhuvi bhavuka. Oh, expert and thoughtful men, say they're in these, relish Srimad Bhagavatam. It is the ripened fruit of the desire tree of the Vedic literatures. Nigama kalpataror galitam palam fruit. Right, so this is the summary, this is the essence, this is the conclusion of the Vedas. This Bhagavatam emanated from the lips of Srila Shukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Okay, so Sarvas Vedeti Hasanam Saram Samudrita. So this is the ripened, this is the goal, this is the ripened fruit. This as a natural follow-up to Bhagavad Gita. In the second verse of Bhagavatam, Vyasadeva, he's saying, Dharma projita koitivatra paramo nirmat saranam satam vejam astavam achavastu shivadam tapotraun mulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni krite kim vapararishvara sajya vidya varujite trakriti bishu shusharista takshina. Completely rejecting anything in the name of religion that has material tints or material goals. That this Bhagavatam propounds the highest truth. And the highest truth is understood by those devotees who are completely pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from religion for the welfare of all. So, koitiva means cheating. So this rejects anything in the name of spirituality or religion that is anything other than pure devotional service to Krishna. So that's the opportunity here. Even something like, because there's many processes where the idea is to become one with God and to merge. So that's also a form of cheating, because as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Natvevaham jatunasam natvam name janadipa nachevana bhavishama sarvevayam atakparam. That we're eternal individuals. We're not going to become God. I mean, we're like the the sun rays, they're part of the sun, but the sun rays are not the sun globe. We're eternal servants of God. Jivera Srupori Krishnera Nityadas. So this is also, or a religion that's meant towards economic development. From the 60s, there's the song by Janis Joplin, "Oh Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes Benz? My friends all have Porsches, I must make amends." Great line there. So it indicates, I'll call it what's become known as the materialistic Protestant work ethic. The idea is, oh, let's pray to God to get rich and things like that. So this Bhagavatam, this is about cultivating pure devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It was compiled by Srila Vyasadeva in the maturity of his literary career, we can say. And by attentively and submissively hearing Bhagavatam, then Krishna in the heart is revealed. And there's no greater bliss than that. So Bhagavatam begins. The first line of the 18,000 verses of Srimad Bhagavatam is Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. O my Lord, Sri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer you my respectful obeisances. I meditate upon Lord Sri Krishna because he is the absolute truth. Absolute means it's good, it's true in all time and space. Okay, just basic examples we can relate to. I can say, I'm David Wolf, 62 years old. I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Okay, so was that true a million years ago? Will that be true in trillions of years? No, this is a relative truth. Okay, but I'm not this body. I'm spirit soul. And I'm eternal servant of God. So that's absolute truth. So, Kamasya Nendriya Pritir Labu Jiveta Yavata Jivasya Tattva Jigyasa Notyas Jaya Karma Bhi. So, the special gift, the special opportunity as spiritual beings in the human form is we get to inquire about the absolute truth. It's described by Sutta Goswami. Life's desires should never be directed towards sense gratification. One should aspire only for a healthy life or self-preservation, keep the car in good shape so that we can use it for inquiry into the absolute truth. For realizing who I am, who am I apart from the designations related to this body. Everything else is just like a dream that will be the source of anxiety. Okay, so, all right. So, at the substratum of all existence, we have the personality of Godhead, Anantarasta, Paramanachantarasta. So Prabhupada's making the point here. So this is a very scientific set of verses. Like when electricity was surcharged in the air, was glanced over by the Supreme at that time by mixture of eternal time and external energy, there occurred the creation of water and taste. Thereafter, the water produced from electricity was glanced over by the Supreme Personality of Godhead and mixed with eternal time and external energy. Thus it was transformed into the earth, which is qualified primarily by smell. So talking about the different senses and the sense objects, electricity, the light to see the world. I'm reminded in the Bible, in the Old Testament, right there at the beginning, or means light. And God said, let there be light. And there was light. Yeah means in the future, there will be light. Let there be light. Let there be more light. Yeah. So this is, so this kind of takes that principle and expands it. Prabhupada says the conception, so he says, from the description of the physical elements in the above verses, it is clear that in all stages the glance of the Supreme is needed with the other additions and alterations. Okay, so the principle here throughout the verses and purport is that, so like the modern material conception, I'll use the term so-called scientific, but in the name of sciences, right, there was a big bang. A big bang got everything going. All right. So, even just the name, it can be easy to get humorous about it, like there's a big explosion. so we can see, so the Bhagavatam version of creation, it can be called a Big Bang. At the same time, the question is there: who started this bang? Who started this bang? Because as a general principle, like in science,
Who lighted the matches?
what's that?
Who lighted the matches?
Who lit the match? Yeah. So that's described here. Okay. So, so Prabhupada's making the point that if it's dead matter, it doesn't ignite on its own, right? It needs someone to light the match, or it doesn't move on its own. It's just like, okay, so this cushion, it's inanimate, not going to move on its own, but there's a conscious entity. There's a conscious entity, so I'm moving the cushion. Okay, simple. That chair won't move on its own, but a conscious entity can come and move it. Basic physical scientific law, law of entropy. A material system on its own will go to lower and lower levels of organization, not to higher levels of organization. So if we look at, I'll call it the three pillar theories, or perhaps fantasies, of what goes in the name of modern science, they all go against the principle of entropy. Because even if you have a Big Bang, okay, so just like if we have, let's say, a big, well, I haven't seen the movie, but there's a movie about Oppenheimer, right? Because he was this scientist and very instrumental in creating the atom bomb. And he, after the first test explosion in the desert in New Mexico, he quoted Bhagavad Gita, Kalosmi, Kalosi Pravita Loka Kshaya Krit. He said, time I am, he quoted Krishna, time I am, destroyer of worlds. And so, okay, so a big nuclear bomb explodes on a city, so it's a Big Bang. I mean, of course, there's horrible destruction and devastation, loss of life. Same time, let's look at it philosophically. So when the big bomb explodes, does the city become more beautiful and a higher level of structure and organization? The buildings that were, in need of repair, painting, everything gets repaired after let's think about it. If you're following me. Yeah. Okay. No, it doesn't happen. No, everything, big explosions lead to a lower level of structure and organization every time. So, therefore, it takes a whole lot of blind faith to believe that there was a Big Bang, and that naturally unfolded as Shakespeare's sonnets. It naturally unfolded as the planets rotating in precision. No, okay. So, and then other theories are the same. The idea of, okay, there was a primordial soup, and then somehow matter combined to form higher levels of organization, the living cell, the amoebas, the fish, the monkeys. Okay, so matter doesn't do that on its own, just like the pillow doesn't move on its own. You need a living force. Okay. So the match is the glance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Ninth Canto of Bhagavatam describes that glance as the Shudarsan Chakra. In some places, Lord Shiva is involved. It gets complex, but the point is, there's a living entity. There's a living entity. And not just that, you might say it's an ambassador of Krishna, known as the Mahavishnu, or the Karanadakashayi Vishnu. Yeah, Karinarna Vajale Bhajati Smayoga. Nidram Anantam Avalam, Nidram Anantam. Jagananda Saromakupa Darashaktim, Avalambya Param Samartim, Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. That the Mahavishnu is there with all the universes within, all the universes within. Lying on his back in the causal ocean, Prabhupada in one lecture says, just like you like to go to the sea or the swimming pool, you like to lie on your back, and enjoy life, right? You like to do that. So Prabhupada says, so where does that come from? That comes from Krishna. That comes from Vishnu. And so he lies on his back. And then, Yasya Ganishvasita Kalamata Valambya Jivanti Loma Vilaja Jagadandanata Vishnu Mahansaya Yasya Kala Vishesha Govinda Madi Pusham Tamaham Bhajami. And then from his breathing, all the universes come out. So, and then there's, okay, so it's complex. At the same time, the principle is that everything starts with life. Things go from subtle to gross, not gross to subtle. Gross to subtle, like Shakespeare's sonnets. That's very subtle and refined, right? Or the workings of this body with the arteries and the vein. I don't know what's happened there, but it's like very sophisticated. And it all started with a big explosion. That's gross to subtle. No, it goes against even the scientific laws of entropy. But things start with the most subtle consciousness, and even the source of all, the substratum of all consciousness, Sri Krishna, the personality of God. So that's the principle here. And we got this here in the second canto. We have similar Sankhya philosophy. When later in the third canto, when Lord Kapila is speaking extensively to his mother, we're going to go to, from a different angle, similar philosophy. So things go from subtle to external. Right? Subtle to external. So that's, we talked on the big universal meta, we might say. The Mahavishnu is the super soul of the metacosmos, and the Garbhodakshay Vishnu is the super soul of the macro universe, and the Kshirodakshay Vishnu is the super soul in our hearts, the microcosmos. Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena Santasadeva Videshu Vilokanti Yam Shama Sundaram Chincha Gunasrupam Govinda Mari Pusham Tamaham Bhajami. Lord Brahma is expressing in ecstasy that I worship Govinda, the supreme, the original personality, the primeval Lord, who is Shyamasundar Krishna himself, possessing innumerable transcendental attributes, and whom the pure devotees see in their heart of hearts with the eyes of devotion tinged with the salve of love. So that's our opportunity to use this life in the human form to develop love for Krishna, the personality of Godhead. Then we're peaceful. Any other desires, we won't be peaceful. Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Kami Sakali Yashanta Krishna Bhakti Nishkama Ateva Shanti. So everything starts from consciousness, the subtle, right? So even this biology, so we talked about the meta, the universe. Well, this whole body is like a universe, and we got like everything here. So this is talking about in the whole meta, macro, cosmos, not just one universe. I mean, okay. But then that's all true here, right? So just like we've got, it's talking about taste and sight and smell. So we've got a sense of smell and a sense of touch and a sense of taste and a sense of hearing, right? And it starts with consciousness. Consciousness, the soul that we are is conscious and consciousness simultaneously, just like a beam of light. It's light and it's illuminating. So we are conscious and consciousness. And according to the consciousness is like a magnet, and energy forms around the magnet of consciousness, spiritual and material energy, depending on the quality of our consciousness, right? So it's described in Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita talks about why we got the particular nose we got. It does, it's very personal. It talks about why we got the particular type of skin and shape of body and type of ear and nose. Shariram yadavapnoti yat shabyud kramadishram grit vetani samriti vairagandani vashayat. It says that according to the consciousness we develop, then like when this body dies, then according to our consciousness, it gives the analogy, Krishna gives the analogy, as the air carries aromas. As the air carries aromas, then we'll get a particular type of nose and sense of touch and eyes and sense of taste. Right? So, see, it's very scientific, just like sense of taste that's related to water, right? Because like, if our mouth is dry, we can't taste anything. Sense of sight is related to like the fire element, the light element, and the sense like sound travels through ether. The sense of sound is related to ether. Touch, right? Touch is basically the motion of the air. Right? It's like fast motion. It's hot, like that. It's hot or cold. Okay, and so very scientific. And so the whole cosmos, and then the cosmos here. It's not an accident that we got this particular body. We got it because we developed a particular consciousness according to the principle of desire and deserve. Then we got this particular body. All right. So we're fully responsible for this body, fully responsible. And so now, all right. So in Bhagavad Gita, you might say a pivotal verse in Bhagavad Gita 2.7, Karpani dosha patasvabhava, Prichami tvam dharma vimud shishastaham sarimam tvam prapana. So Arjuna says, now I am confused about my duty, I've lost my composure due to miserly weakness. So miser, the word miser is used. So miser is like, what's a miser? A miser is like someone who's got a lot, so I've got a lot of money, but I'm not going to do anything with it. I'm not going to do anything with it. I'm just going to collect it and look at the numbers every day, how much money I have. That's like miser. So we got great riches in this human form, granted by Krishna. And so the human form, if we look at all the species, it's a relatively rare form. And right, just in this room, like how many, I don't know, amoebas and what to speak of blades of grass and microscopic organisms, just unlimited trillions, quadrillions. So the human form is relatively rare. Right, on this planet, 7.3 billion humans, something. It's rare, and it's a special opportunity. So we got like great riches in the human form, and then if we're not doing something valuable with it, that's being miserly. That's being miserly. And so the idea is we got a particular type of eyes and ears and senses to enjoy them. And then we can think, yes, I'm free to enjoy, and that's the illusion of freedom. Because actually we're trapped, right? Then what my eyes want to see, what my hands want to touch, what on a more subtle platform, what my mind and material ego want that respect and that adoration, then that drives me and I become a slave. So much. So practically everything in the name of freedom is about, be free, which means be a complete slave to your mind and senses. What goes in the name of freedom? So actual freedom is the capacity to commit to my highest good. That's actual freedom. And to the extent that I'm attached and invested in enjoying the senses, the gross and subtle senses of the material body, then I'm in prison. Then I'm in Durga, the prison house of material existence. So the opportunity, and then in other species, for the most part, there's no options, no choice. Just I'll sniff here, and I'll go for this eating, sleeping, mating, defending, like that. Human form, we have the opportunity to do something, the four basic animal activities: eating, sleeping, mating, defending. So we don't want to neglect, those bodily necessities, just like We're not the car, we're the driver of the car. It doesn't mean we neglect the car, but in taking care of the car and using it for a purpose, we don't want to become illusion that I am this car, and that when when I fill up the gas tank, oh, now my thirst is slaked. No, no, no. What's nourishment for the driver of the car? Okay, so that this driver car, that's that irreducible quant of consciousness that inhabits this material body. So in the human form, we get to come alive to changing the quality of our desire, changing the quality of our desire. So rather than, because we desire to enjoy the set of senses, and then we'll go to another prison cell after this body dies to enjoy another set of senses. So here we get to I. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhaktir Uchyate. Let me engage in bhakti. Let me at least practice. So let me engage in bhakti to practice satisfying the transcendental senses of Krishna. And that's the science of self-realization that's given in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. The science of self-realization of starting with this principle. Things go from subtle to external. Everything starts with consciousness. It was just a recent coaching session that I was conducting, and the client is having some challenges in family relationships, and especially upcoming challenges she's dreading some things. So we looked at her internal feelings of inadequacy. We looked at interpersonal communication. We did some communication coaching, and it was all valuable. And ultimately, where she went is, well, essentially, ultimately, it's about my consciousness. So I'm going to be in these situations with family members, and there's different disturbances, as there always are. Dukkhalayam Shashvatam. Intrinsically, material life means a temporary place full of misery. And when the miseries are relatively less, we call that happiness. But that's not the positive, actual joy of the soul. It's just, Prabhupada gives the example that in some countries at some times, maybe still today, if there was a criminal to punish them, they would put them on like a stool, and they would dunk them under the water. So it's a very horrible thing. But then, before they would die, they wouldn't die, they would lift them up. So then there's gasping for breath. Gasping for breath. So then when gasping for breath, because I'm not underwater drowning, this is happiness. But it's not happiness. It's just relief of misery. It's just relief of misery. So the real happiness is the happiness of the soul and a devotional turning of consciousness to Sri Krishna. So this client, he said, look, ultimately it's my consciousness. And so where she went in her session is to rise earlier, chant focused Hare Krishna Maha Mantra rounds, and be chanting constantly, reading, coming to Malini's reading groups on Bhagavad Gita and Krishna book, be absorbed in the vibration of the pure devotee. And she said, then there'll still be disturbances, but I won't be disturbed by them, at least less disturbed. So, so that's spiritual intelligence. Evambude prambudva samstapya manmamana jahisha mahabaho kamarupam durasada. Krishna advises us in Bhagavad Gita. He advises Arjuna, and Arjuna is a real historical personality, and he represents us. He advises Arjuna, with spiritual intelligence, control the lower self with the higher self. And in that way, we control the insatiable enemy known as lust. And so, fairly common saying these days in personal growth, if we're only willing to do what's easy, life will be hard. if we're willing to do what's hard, life will be easy. So that's definitely applied in spiritual life. Spiritual life is very easy. It's flowing, it's inspirational, it's easy, true Krishna consciousness. But I make it hard because I'm attached to material desires. To the extent that I'm attached to material desires, and to get up so early in the morning, that's hard for the material mind. But I do it. I get up early. And now, like, here we are, 4 or 5 hours into the morning Krishna consciousness program. Wow, this is nice. Wow, this is nice. Whereas it would have been easy to sleep till 8 or 9. Okay, that'd be easy. But then the whole day is dragging hard. So it goes similarly with all facets. To the extent that we truly engage that capacity to commit to our highest good, whether it's in eating, chanting, how we're relating, the sound vibration we expose ourselves to, then we get more and more Vishaya Vinivartate Niraharasya Masuvarja Masopyasa Pramjushta Nivartate. We get the higher taste of Krishna consciousness. And then naturally we give up material desires, inclinations for personal material sense gratification. Okay, so thank you. Thanks for listening. Thanks for your attention. Thanks for your presence. I welcome if anyone would like to share any comments, realizations, or ask any questions. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Kim.
Sorry, I am driving and I can't even see the screen, so excuse me. Yeah, I just have one question. Like, for me, the Big Bang Theory was always faith affirming, because I thought, well, the description does sound so much like, the description Krishna has, or the scriptures have in the beginning, of going out and then eventually coming back in is even part of that Big Bang Theory.
Yeah.
So do you feel there is some faith affirming part of that?
Okay, thank you, Kim. I know you're driving, but if you want to say more, what you find faith affirming about it, before I comment, I do have some comments, but if you want to,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, because I mean, on a very, not knowing much basis, when I have read littles about it, I do see this. I don't know. To me, from my early readings of how the universe came to be, Krishna, has it expand.
Yeah,
I forget how I don't know, is it out of the belly of Vishnu?
yeah,
But whatever,
yeah,
it expands out and then eventually comes back in. And it just sounds very similar. And for me, when I read anything in ancient scripture that matches science, and I know science can change, but going on the fact that that part might not change. Yeah, I think, well, how would this be in scripture if it wasn't coming from, beyond
sure,
humans?
sure.
So, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for that, Kim. Yeah, in so many ways, modern science is coming to conclusions that were there in ancient scripture. So that's very faith affirming in so many ways. Yeah, the Big Bang, Prabhupada would say, yeah, there's validity to the Big Bang. It's just about, he says that in this purport, essentially. Those who can mark only the changes of the physical elements, okay, there's a change of physical elements, there was a Big Bang, and cannot perceive the hidden hands of the Lord behind them are certainly less intelligent persons, although they may be advertised as great material scientists. So Prabhupada would say it's basically the idea, okay, everything expands from like a point, and just like, and Prabhupada would say, what the material theories are missing is the consciousness behind the expansion. But in some sense we can say definitely those theories have the basic right idea. And yet in so many fields, I could go on and on. Even whether it's even So like modern science about the age of the age of the earth, the age of the universe. Okay, they're coming to conclusions that are very, very consistent with the Vedas talking about billions and tens of billions of years. So, it seems to me that like what material empirical science is looking for, in some sense, they're they got it, but they're looking for God, but they don't want to call it that. Because if we look at okay, what they're saying is the Big Bang started from a singularity. That was the term a few decades ago. Now it's strings, whatever. But so the idea of the origin, what are the qualities of that singularity? Okay, well, it's smaller than the smallest subatomic particle. It's greater and more powerful than anything. It existed before time and space. If we look at all the qualities, it's like, that's Krishna. Smaller than the smaller, greater than the greatest, more powerful than the most powerful, existing before time. Just like we don't want to call it that. So yeah, I mean, what you're saying, Kim, it's just Prabhupada's kind of like, yeah, they got it. They're
Impersonal aspect of Krishna.
What's that?
The impersonal aspect.
The impersonal aspect of Krishna, yeah. And so it's just about, you might say, consciousness is the missing link in their theories. I mean, that's a little simplistic, but there's a lot of truth there. Consciousness, the missing link, more than the missing link, consciousness is the missing foundation. And then without that, then we get some absurdities like just a material explosion leading to Shakespeare's sonnets and matter coming together and creating higher levels of organization like that. But you just take the ideas and put in consciousness and source consciousness. So yeah, it is faith affirming, and that's been a big part of my process in Krishna consciousness, going back to the early '80s. Because I was educated in Western education, the evolutionary paradigm and science, and like that. And so when I would see that, science is coming to conclusions that are there in the Vedas. And the Vedas at India 5,000 years ago, they were supposedly they're just cavemen grunting. So how could they come up with this fantastic stuff that modern science is just beginning to catch up with? Yes, that's faith affirming. Thanks for that, Kim. Even a very basic thing, because, okay, let's say, so in the ancient Vedas, like Bhagavatam, it says a healthy diet for humans is vegetarian. It's just basic things, right? So, all right, so let's say if we look at 1940s, 1950s, modern nutritional science, not too long ago. It's like, no, vegetarian diet, no, you don't get enough protein in this and that. Starting in the 60s. Okay, now it's just like more and more sciences.
They're going back to other ways.
Now they're going back. There's different trends, yeah. But
yeah, somehow I feel uncomfortable with the ideas of modern science is catching up with the Veda, because modern science is devolving, not evolving.
It's devolving.
Yeah. So there's something.
You're not so comfortable with it.
We can turn back.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, okay. So now Malini's given not a disagreement, but I would say an alternate perspective. Because so I see it this way. Related to what Kim says, which is a very real part of my process, that I see modern science is discovering things that the ancient Vedas knew thousands and millions of years ago. So that's faith affirming, and that's true. And I give many examples where that was transformational for me. Now you're saying, well, modern science is devolving, so that's true too. We give some example of that, and just bringing people down to just a more and more unethical, immoral, confused, ignorant. Yeah, so that's all true too. So this relates to epistemology. So means how we know. So modern science is an epistemology. It's like an inferential epistemology based on empiricism and then analysis. In the Vedas, that's called anumana. That's called anumana. Okay, it's a way to know, and it can get some knowledge, but it's imperfect. And so, okay, the way I see this, Malini, is like, so that there are some instances where through the anumana logical positivism, that epistemology, there are some where they're coming to realizations and knowledge that are there in the Vedas, and then that's faith affirming. Okay. Now there are other areas where they're going the other way and they're just becoming more and more ignorant like that. So we're not saying that, look, we should accept what Prabhupada says because science, modern science proves it. We're not saying that, okay, that other epistemologies like pratyaksha means sense perception, anumana, inferential methods, which are also based on sense. Other epistemologies, they can support and reinforce the Shabda Brahman of Prabhupada. But they never supplant it. They never override it. Okay. So if there's not an agreement, we accept Shabda Brahman, the perfect source of knowledge. At the same time, let's say, so I'm coming towards that as my life goes on. But at the same time, there are whole lots of billions of people who have a lot of faith in the religion of modern empirical so-called science. They have a lot of faith there. So we can, when they see, we can illustrate how, look, like Kim said, how, look, in this field, in that field, in that field, in archaeology and mathematics, they're coming to discoveries that were there in the Vedas that can increase their faith in the Shabda of Prabhupada in the Vedas. Now, ultimately, again, and that worked for me. It was a process for me. I mean, still. But then we come to the point. I've come to the point. I've come to the point where now, like I don't really need modern science to affirm, but that was very helpful for me back in 1983, 1984. So then to increase the faith, then we practice the process, we get a higher taste, and we get more and more trust in the roadmap of the Shabda, of the Shabda epistemology. And then more and more, when there's an apparent contradiction between what modern science says, so now my trust in my educational background from before I came to Prabhupada's movement, it's like less and less as years go on, less and less. And so now if there's an apparent disagreement, my epistemological commitments, that's in Srila Prabhupada, that's in the Vedas, like that. But to come to this point, it was very helpful for me to see, oh, look, modern science is now saying something that the Vedas said thousands of years ago. So the Vedas, that wasn't just some primitive, superstitious caveman. So to come to this point where, not that I have, great faith, but I have, much deeper trust in Shabda Brahman than I did 4 years ago, then what Kim was saying, that was helpful. Hare Krishna. Gajendra Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, good morning.
Hare Krishna.
Hopefully I'll make some sense. I'm appreciating the class and the different questions that are coming here. I mean, how well are we really going to understand these things? That one thing that I think we get, and I don't know that we really want the distraction of feeling like, oh, I've got it now. I understand the process of creation you know, from the first moment of material time and all the details of it's, you know, you could spend for practically forever trying to understand these things. It's always going to be subject to the limits of our own understandings and misunderstandings. And it's all very much, I think, secondary to the part of when we talk about Shabda Brahma.
Yeah.
It's just the fact that one has faith with devotion or loyalty. I think that is the most important part of it, because there may always be mistakes in our understanding of the material things. At the same time, I was appreciating, where you're going in your process over the years of like, well, gosh, is science helping my faith, and to the point where you are now. And I think I kind of look at science, and that's it. I don't try to attach, like, is this the absolute truth? Is this scientific report? But it's more like it's just expanding kind of the glory of Krishna, of the amazing nature of spirit as reality, and just to realize the complexity of our body or an ecosystem, regardless of the detail. It's kind of like in the Bhagavad Gita, one thing, like some see the soul as amazing. I mean, that's not right or wrong. That's just an aspect of the soul.
Yeah.
And it's just like, wow, Krishna is so amazing, even if I don't understand these details. So I think what the scientists discover, in the Bhagavatam that we have, the process of creation is kind of summarizing, indicative, sort of making some points, but it's obviously not going to be, endless research about, plant cells or something like that. But, it's just a way of appreciating Krishna. But I think the biggest thing for me about all of this is actually just the importance of the core processes of sadhana, because whatever's going on with all this other stuff, and so I want to say just a little something about sadhana, if I may, and it also connects a little bit to something you had said about like the intrinsically, like the definition of material consciousness or life is suffering. And you gave some example that, what we call happiness in the material world is kind of some sense of relief in the story of like the torture with the seesaw dunking people in water or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, that's a very kind of, particular circumstance that's kind of clear and related to suffering. But I'm looking as we move farther in our devotional service, because, okay, so material life might be like, oh gosh, I thought I was enjoying, doing meth and driving 120 miles an hour until I crashed into a tree. And wow, that's a big correction. And yeah, I really couldn't enjoy like that. That's like kind of really gross and low. But I'm looking, and I'm sort of talking about my own life experience. I hope it's not indulgent. I hope someone will find value. But even in our course of, devotional life, where maybe even a lot of our activities are with the idea of service, how we may be serving Krishna we're alive in this. We may even feel like we're preaching in some way. We may even be doing that effectively as an instrument, but it is still possible to get, even if our life is largely would be the mode of goodness, there is still the mode of passion, the consciousness of I am the doer. All these things can come into play if we're not careful with our sadhana. It's almost things that can appear good or even spiritual, even sankirtan, can become there can be an error if we're not really careful about the very fundamentals.
Very fundamental. Cultivating our consciousness with the sadhana, Prabhupada gave.
Yeah.
That's at the root, that's at the core. Otherwise, even in the name of devotional activities, we'd probably be growing some weeds and not realizing. I appreciate your sharing. I'm reminded in what you're saying, Gajendra Prabhu, the first of the seed verses, Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo, Mata Sarvam Pravartateti Matvabhajati Mam Buddha Bhava Samambita. He says that those who understand me as the source of all material and spiritual energies, then naturally, as you were saying, then naturally they're just inspired to serve me with devotion. So that's what it comes down to, studying about Krishna's material, and as you said, a way to appreciate Krishna, to come to deeper enthusiasm, to serve Krishna through serving the movement of his pure devotee. Thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah, and I would just say, coming to faith, it's like how much time do we spend comparing what the scientists say to what might be in Bhagavatam, as opposed to just really chanting good rounds and see what the result of that is on our faith.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Malini.
I just want to go back to a few things. I had the same experience as, like Fest Affirming.
Yeah.
When the magazine Origin came out, it was very exciting for me.
Sure.
I consider myself a scientist. I consider myself elevated because of science in the human evolution. But that human evolution is not real. There is a human devolution.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm feeling uncomfortable with.
Yeah.
To look at human being now knowing by their own endeavor in science and speculation more than, for example, human being 2,000 years ago.
Right.
I'm not saying, there is Shabda Brahman and there is all, and of course, but there is some contradiction there, and it's just a contradiction I found.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's somehow there is one message that say human being, like, wow, now science is really evolving because even find out things that are written in a Veda. So it seems that it's glorifying an evolution.
Yeah.
When, what Veda describe is devolution.
Yeah.
And so that's what I was asking about. And another thing I want to share about the comment from Gajendra.
Yeah.
I have been thinking a lot about those sense object and how the sense object manifests the gross element, because that's what we are looking at, the sense object manifesting the gross element. And if we look, like in our own experience,
Yes.
we have that, like sound kind of manifests space, and from that space moving with the sound, and of course, the personality of Godhead, then we have air.
Yeah.
And the friction of air,
Right.
like, create electricity.
Fire.
You know,
Yeah.
like we have how it's called, not thunder, lightning.
Lightning. Yeah.
Lightning is what it is.
Right. It's a
And
fiction.
then I remember in science, when in chemistry, we were having oxygen and hydrogen in a little, what is it called,
The
whatever it's called.
test tube there.
Test tube.
Yeah.
And then we'll put lightning.
Yeah.
And then we'll create water.
It gets water, and then it rains. It rains.
You know, like that.
Yeah, it's very scientific.
So even those things that we are hearing about the sense object manifesting the growth element,
Yeah.
it's something, if we want to open our eyes, we can even observe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can observe,
can
right?
observe and be right there and see
Empirically.
that, oh,
yes.
Krishna gave it to us too.
Okay.
So that's a few things that's happening in my mind.
Thanks for that. Yeah. And yeah, this progression, subtle to growth, the objects, we can see that. I liked how you described that. The friction of air leads to fire. And then when there's lightning, then there's rain. You do experiments in the laboratory. There's lectures where Prabhupada goes into that, how we can empirically see the truth of this. The first part where you shared, well, oh, okay, yeah. I think you're familiar with the verse, knowledge is a deadly friend when no one sets the rules. The fate of all mankind, I fear, is in the hand of fools. You familiar with that verse? No? Okay. We play it at the end of day 2 in the advanced course. So, yeah. So, right, so there's the text in Bhagavatam, Idami Bhum Sastapasashritasya Yadutama Shloka Gunandabarnam, that this science, chemistry, physics, social science, social work, politics, economics, it's all meant to glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Uttama Shloka. And so it's not to be rejected. But then in modern studies, so we talked about like the Big Bang, well, they're searching for Krishna, smaller, but they don't want to call it that. We don't want to call it that due to envy. So when those sciences are used without trying to establish God and to glorify God, then it leads to more and more degradation with no morality, no ethics, and backwards theories like the evolutionary paradigm and things like that. That's what's happening for me. So now they might find some information that confirms the Vedas that can affirm our faith, but without, it gets to the why, so in the Vedas, the why is to realize who we are as spiritual beings, is to realize who we are as servants of God, to establish the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the goal of everything, to establish bhakti. But in material science, that why is missing, and then it just then it becomes more and more degrading and confusing.
Yeah, because people 2,000 years ago, they had more sense of the real creation.
Yeah.
Than the Big Bang theory.
Yeah.
Like we can look at it from that way, but we won't want to glorify it like it's an evolution. It's a devolution.
It's a devolution, yes. As the song goes. Mm-hmm. Monkeys in business suits and that sort of thing. Anything else? Any other comments? Thank you all for giving your consciousness to Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you all. Jai Srila Prabhupada.